Okay, so I went to college, and in college, I got interested in radio. They needed volunteers for KGED 88.3, the college radio station there. So I started getting involved in radio and found that I really, really loved it. And went on and worked in marketing and publishing, and then did that for about 13 years. And then one day, this guy at a radio station in Searcy, Arkansas calls me, KWCK 99.9, I believe it is. And he called me and says, "Hey, I hear you have an interest in radio and I'm looking for some people." So I went and interviewed with him and ended up working for him. And then he decided that he was going to move to Missouri and take over a radio station that was employee owned. And I thought, wow, cool. Employee owned radio station, be part owner of a radio station. That'd be awesome. So I moved up to the Fort Leonard Wood area and was at a live remote, remote broadcast one time. And it was at a nightclub and had a big bar area in the front with pool tables and a big dance area in the back. And I was out there talking to some of the people that were playing pool and handing out business cards and things like that. Well, come to find out, this one couple that was playing pool had a band, and I didn't know anybody. And I just moved to that area and I didn't know anybody. And they said, "Well, come to our gigs and you'll meet people." So by by going to their gigs, I met a girl, and she was friends with the sound person. And about 2 years later, we ended up going on our first date. By then, I had not only was I working in radio, but I was working part time as a karaoke DJ, filling in for a guy. And she would come to my karaoke gigs, and we got to talking and stuff, and ended up going out. Well, anyway, our second date was an out of town date, and I brought her from Fort Leonard Wood area, which is South Central Missouri, down to Eureka Springs to Diversity in November. And we came down here, and of course, I gave her the tour, out to the bridge, at Beaver Township, and I tell everybody about that. And of course, at Inspiration Point, and we drove over Beaver Dam. And she had been working at Fort Leonard Wood Army Community Hospital. She's former military, partially disabled vet, was working at the hospital, but had been thinking about taking a position with the United States Army Corps of Engineers. And I was driving across the dam and I said, "Hey, by the way, this is a Corps of Engineers dam." We thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool to be able to move back to Eureka Springs someday and not be relying on the tourist industry? Well, we went out in the world and we investigated it and found out that it was, for one thing, um, somebody was going to have to pass away or retire. It was a pretty tight knit unit, and people liked where they were. And that's the thing with the people that work at Beaver Dam. They do that job because they like it. They could do a job differently somewhere else and make lots more money. They do it because they like this area. They're technically civil servants. And so, anyway, I said, wouldn't it be cool? Well, we investigated it and didn't think it was going to come true. So we moved as far away as North Dakota. She had gotten a job in a power plant, the Garrison Dam up in North Dakota, right central North Dakota, Lake Saskatchewan. It is the second largest dirt dam in the United States, and it's a 5 unit power generation, just like Beaver is a 2 unit power generation. And so, went to this training in Portland, Oregon. Wasn't even supposed to be at this training, okay? And was there. And this gentleman said, "Well, what are you doing here?" Because one thing, she was one of only 4 women in the whole room of about 100 guys. And she was like, "Well, they sent me here because, maybe I'm not going to be in this position the rest of my life. Maybe I have higher aspirations." And he goes, "Oh, I like that." About a year and a half later, after we had closed on a house, this gentleman calls her, okay, and says, "Hey, I'm taking over a little lake in Northwest Arkansas. My wife's tired of living up here in the Northwest where it rains all the time." And so she says, "Well, I'm familiar with the lakes in Northwest Arkansas. What lake?" And he says, "Oh, you've never heard of Beaver." And she says, "Yes, I have. As a matter of fact, my spouse was born and raised in Eureka Springs." And so, on a fluke, That's how I got back to Eureka Springs and have managed to live here and buy a house and remodel it and enjoying loving life and having a great time. And very fortunate to be married to someone who is a civil servant who doesn't have to rely and I don't have to rely on the tourist industry because, of course, we love playing tourist. We love going downtown to diversity and doing stuff like that because that's our first thing. Our first out of town date was coming to diversity, you know. And of course, that's a whole story too about how diversity got started. I went to school with a friend of mine who kind of got diversity started, but that's a whole nother story we can tell another time.